There is so much oil in this car.
Oh no, she's burning again.
I think it might be time for an engine replacement. Welcome back to another video on the channel, guys, and we are back here in Minnesota with the LR4. This absolute beauty has been sitting for a couple of weeks while we've been back home working on the LR2 and a surprise project of the Jeep. Today, we're going to see if this car is truly the best deal that there has ever been on Copar, or whether we are still way in the hole, just like the LR2. Before we get into this video, let's rewind a couple of weeks back of when we picked up this vehicle. This 2011 LR4, we accidentally won at auction when we were last out here in Minnesota. I had bid stupidly low on the vehicle and thought that I would never win the auction. But after going through my first ever Copar auction, I actually won it. I couldn't believe it at the time, and still I'm pinching myself a little bit that I did. But now the reality sets in. We need to figure out whether this vehicle was actually a good deal or not. So now we're back here. We're going to get the Land Rover from the amazing First Choice Exteriors team, who have let us store it here. And we're going to load it up onto the trailer that we have right here. And we're going to take it to the garage that we're going to be working on this project for the next 2-ish weeks. There we go. We got it all the way back here to the garage. I must say, driving over, I was concentrating very, very hard. This is very different to towing the LR2. This is one that is a lot heavier. So yeah, that was fun going down the street. All right, so we've got a new addition to the vlog. We're gonna get Brooke's raw reaction, because she actually hasn't seen this build at all. She's seen pictures, and I've told her about it, but she hasn't actually seen it. So I hope that she likes this one, because this one is a good one, I think.
Is it? Okay. Well, it looks nicer than the other one.
What's our thoughts? What do you think? It's pretty nice inside, no?
It's mine now.
It's the new build, everybody. So in order to start off that process, we needed to begin by doing some basic maintenance and diagnostics to see where this issue could be coming from. And there was a few things that we wanted to start off with. First of all, I had done some research and I knew about the PCV system that is inside of these LR4s. PCV stands for positive crank ventilation. And what that essentially means is it takes high pressure and harmful gases out from the crankcase and recycles it to get burnt into the intake of the engine. When this system, or the valve inside of the system, fails, it can cause oil to get burnt and big plumes of smoke to exit out of the exhaust. In general, it's not going to be too harmful to the engine as long as it's not run for too long like this, and is actually quite a cheap fix. So that was the first problem that we wanted to approach. What was quite exciting when I was actually getting the car off of the ramp, which you guys may have seen, was the car stopped smoking once we started driving it and put it under a bit of load. And I hadn't done that yet. I just made it idle and it was pumping out a bunch of smoke while it was idling, as you guys saw, but I hadn't actually driven it. And once I'd driven it, the smoke disappeared. And that's very exciting, because that might mean we have got the best deal ever on a Land Rover LR4 from 2011. And the reason for that is because it might be the PCV valves that are located right at the top of the engine here. They're a $30 part, which I've already ordered. And if that is the actual problem of why it's smoking so much, then that's such a cheap fix. That doesn't mean there's not more maintenance things that we need to do with the vehicle to get it home, but that would be just awesome. It would mean we don't have to change the motor. It means that, yeah, it just makes our life so much easier. So we're gonna first have a look at that and see if they do look perished. And then we'll go around and work through the rest of the engine bay to see what else there is. Maybe some air filters, maybe need to do an oil change, all of that sort of stuff. So let's not hang about, let's get into the vehicle and let's show you guys what this is all about. Okay, what I also love about this engine bay is that it's a lot bigger than the LR2s. So working around inside of it should be, or hopefully, a little bit easier. Just like that, we have our PCV valves right here. We began by removing the old PCV valves and assessing the condition of them. You can see that they were ripped to shreds and completely perished. So I thought I was onto an absolute winner. We could just go and buy the parts for the PCV valves and change them, and our problem would be solved. Okay, so the conclusion from our research is, number one, that these are absolutely perished. Look at that. So this could definitely be the culprit based on the research that I just did. If these diaphragms are like they are and perished, then obviously they're not working, meaning the oil can get through and cycle back into the headers and get burnt off. However, these are very, very similar symptoms to the crankshaft seals going as well, meaning the oil is getting burnt. So it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two. But if it is those crankshaft seals, then obviously that's a whole headers off, access to them, secure timing, all of that. And we'll just do an engine replacement on this because we haven't got time for that, and the engine replacement would be way quicker. So that's what we need to test. So I'm going to have to go and get those PCV valves. I've got them coming in on Monday, which is a few days away. So I don't want to wait. So I'm going to head down to the dealership tomorrow and just pick some up because I've phoned them and they have them in. So we'll get those tomorrow and we'll try that. And that then might be literally the cheapest repair ever for a vehicle like this. So I'm going to go check out the condition here of these of the air filters in the air boxes and just go around the engine bay, do a couple of other things like that, check fluid levels, coolant levels, all of that sort of stuff, check the hoses and see if there's anything that's like super obvious that we need to order or that I need to get a list together for. All right, so that's one more thing off the list. These air filters for the intake are looking great. That was obviously the date in which they were replaced. That's one more thing off the list. Air filters are good. All right, we've got the Land Rover jacked so I can get underneath and check out what is seeming like a little bit of some sort of leak from somewhere. So take a look at that. All right, it's a little tight up under here, but thought I'd show you guys. So we got this kind of skid plate right here. And then you can see that the leak that's coming out of here, and coming off the back of the pan is all oil. So the next step for us is we'll take that skid plate off. And with this being a Minnesota car, those bolts were rusted closed. So it took a lot of heating, a lot of WD-40, and for one of our bolts that we rounded off, it took us grinding that bolt off. But eventually we got the skid plate off and we were able to identify where some of these oil leaks were coming from. So this is obviously where the pan was. So we've got oil here, and I think I found the first culprit, and that is coming from the sump, or from the oil pan. And it's right at the back. You can see that the gasket for that goes up to there. Seems to be fairly dry up there from what I can see. If I can get the light in the right place, there we go. In that middle, it seems to be fairly dry, but back here, obviously, you can see it's quite wet. And then, I don't know if you guys can see right up in there, but we have something which I believe is also related to that PCV system. There is quite a lot of oil up in there, and it looks like it's coming from an actuator on the side right here. And then that seems to kind of proceed forward as well. But unfortunately, all of that is under this stuff right here, which I have no idea what it is. Yeah, there's definitely a leak right there, and it seems to be in some sort of connection to the actuator. It's right there, and then back here, which is at the back of the pan, it seems to be related to the sump and the oil pan itself. Okay, so sit rep. The pan is officially off, and we just gave it a bit of a clean, so that's a bit of a nicer working environment for us. As you guys saw, we have identified where the leaks are coming from. Okay, so $140 later, we have our new PCV valves, and they are in much better condition than these old ones right here. So let's put these back in. Then we'll perform an oil change just to make sure that there's not too much oil in it, and we know it's got fresh oil in it. And then we will give it its first start, and it may be the cheapest fix to an LR4 in this condition ever. So that's what I'm hoping. The new PCV valves are officially in the car. With that being the case, I then wanted to make sure that I completed a full oil change on the vehicle so that when I went for another startup with the new PCV valves in, I knew that the vehicle wasn't overfull with oil or that it was bad oil in the engine that was causing some of these issues. And when we removed all of the oil from the engine, we noticed something quite concerning. Look at that, guys. There is so much oil in this car. It takes 8.5 quarts, but this is way more than that. So, as you guys saw, there was way too much oil inside of that engine, and it must have been causing many issues. Too much oil in the engine can create too much oil pressure, can force oil in different places that it should not go, and ultimately cause more damage than good of lubrication in the engine. So my fingers are crossed that maybe this is also part of the problem, and doing that oil change was really helpful. All right, we have our old filter. Here's our new oil filter. There's also a new O-ring. I'm gonna make sure it sits in this little groove right here. In that goes. There it goes, on nicely. There we go. New oil filter on. And place this back on. Lovely jubbly. So it was finally time to officially do the first startup, the first test drive, and see if we truly got the best deal that anybody has got here at Copar. Okay guys, it's the moment of truth. Oil is back in the car. PCV valves are new, the new ones are officially in. We're gonna start it up and see whether we have truly got the best deal ever or whether we've still been scammed. Let's look at the positives of this vehicle. The interior is in immaculate condition. The exterior is also in immaculate condition. There's no dents, there's no scratches, there's no damages that would devalue this car. It's just these mechanical problems that we're fixing. So I'm so grateful for this build, no matter the outcome of what you guys are about to see. So I turned the key, started the engine, and we were looking like we were in the clear. There was no smoke coming out of the exhaust, and I truly thought that we'd solved our problems.
All right, we're letting it run and get up to temperature. Obviously you saw the first start was a little smoky, but absolutely nothing right now. How are we looking inside? It's saying hood is open, left front door is open, no warning lights. It sounds excellent. Let's shut the hood. Okay, we'll try and clear, see if there's any codes. I was really ready to celebrate, but then I put my foot down and gave the engine a little bit of revs, and all of our problems came back. It was smoking again, and this time it was really bellowing out of the exhaust. A bit of oil again when we give it a rev. A little bit coming out the exhaust. Oh no, she's burning again. So that was when I revved it.
All right, so we let the car warm up a little bit, but as you guys saw, it's still smoking, unfortunately. So it doesn't mean that we're out of luck just yet, because the previously perished PCV valves could have been just, I mean, once you saw that they were ripped, it could have been spraying oil all around the kind of intake area. And so when I gave it a bit of gas and it sucked in a bit more, it could have, sucked in more of that oil and be burning it off.
All right, time to take her on our first official test drive.
So we took it up the road, we drove it around a little bit, and we allowed the car to get up to temperature. But if anything, that made it worse. As I was driving up the road and I was putting it under load, even more plumes of smoke were flying out the back of the car. And as I sat at idle and gave it a few more revs getting it up to temperature, we started to see a lot of liquid dumping out of the exhaust. And it looked like it had some residue of oil or fuel or something inside of it. That was a little bit concerning.
Oh yeah, it's coming out big time. Definitely haven't fixed the problems that we're having with this car. I think it might be time for an engine replacement.
So it was time to turn the engine off and come to terms with the fact that this is going to be a much bigger job than we think. But I'm not losing hope. We had one more test to do on the vehicle to see whether we had actually fixed this PCV system. So to test whether we do have correct pressure inside of the crankcase, you can remove the oil filler cap and you can place a glove or a piece of paper over the hole. And if that piece of paper or that glove gets slightly sucked in to the hole, then we're in the clear. We have good positive crank valve pressure. Or if it blows it out, then we know that there's still a problem with that system and it's not doing its job.
Okay, so we're gonna start her up. Not smoking too much. Not getting anything. We're also gonna try a piece of paper. Oh, there we go. It's sucking. She ain't blowing.
Well, the good news is that we do have correct pressure in the crank. Our PCV system is working, so that fix of those valves was probably absolutely necessary. But what that does point to is there's probably a deeper mechanical issue, something like the failure of the valve guide seals, which could be allowing the oil to enter into the chamber, or even potentially what we mentioned earlier in the first video with the piston rings being perished. Now the latter is probably quite unlikely because the smoke coming out of the exhaust would be fairly consistent, and as you guys have seen, it is absolutely not. So it's all pointing towards the valve issue. But we're running out of time on this vehicle, and I only have 2 weeks to really diagnose this problem and begin the process of truly fixing it. So it's pointing more and more towards the direction of doing a full engine swap. But that's all we're gonna have time for in today's video. In the next video, you guys are gonna find out whether we have to do an engine swap and whether we are gonna be able to do it in time for us to drive this vehicle back in a few weeks. So stick around, subscribe to the channel, and see what happens next with this LR4 and see whether we truly have got a good deal or whether it is time for an engine swap, which is both costly and time consuming. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.